All right, everyone, welcome back to Social Entrepreneurship. Hope you all had a good spring break. And then I had a really good spring break, so this worked out pretty well. Before we dive in, I wanted to just get a little bit of feedback. How was class last week with Laura Clark?
Really good.
Really good.
Yeah? What's one thing you learned from her presentation?
I liked she had one slide with like circles intersecting about like if there's like career, passion, whatever, and like different parts of the Venn diagram had like you're fulfilled but you're not like actualized, whatever. Anyways, that was a cool diagram. I like that, and like it sort of give a recommendation list of like what you should do instead of what you're missing.
Very cool. Alright, so we've got a lot I want to kind of cover tonight. We're going to spend the first 10 minutes or so going over some of the ideas you've been coming up throughout the semester and making sure folks can kind of lock in on an idea that they want to register to pitch for the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Challenge. And then we're going to review the readings for about 10 minutes, and I've got a few handouts we'll go into as I kind of talk through introduction to customer discovery, what is it like to get out of the building and start to talk to people about the things you're working on. And then we'll kind of prep a little bit for next week, as next week's going to be focused on how to pitch, present, and persuade, a lot more public speaking skills like that. Simone, just grab one each of the handouts. Cool, so I want to maybe go around, and Angela, I'm going to put you on the spot, so I'm giving you about 30 seconds to think about it. And would love everybody to share one or two ideas that they've come up with in the past few weeks. It doesn't have to be the idea you want to do for the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Challenge. And now I think I've bought enough time for Angela to remember one of those ideas.
Actually, one of the ideas that I really liked that you actually mentioned in the email was like a site or like an application that allows you to like take a quiz and then provides suggestions like a book you should read or maybe like a movie you should watch, so it kind of like gauges your mood.
Awesome. How about you, Robert?
I wrote my most recent one I wrote down. I really liked it, but I can't remember it right now. But I remember I liked when I wrote it down, so we'll give you two.
Yeah, load it up. Tim, you got any ideas loaded in your brain and or computer?
I don't know if we're gonna do it, but I know Nick and I were talking about like it was originally Nick's idea, but like going to colleges and like selling cheap like Georgetown shirts that you may have bought off of kids who were accepted to Georgetown, bought a t-shirt and then
Didn't
don't
go.
use it anymore.
Yeah.
Or like traded in a few old college t-shirts. Kinda like what Weeks of Welcome does, but like for all colleges.
Alright.
Yeah.
Cool.
I got mine.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like a database of like student projects. So like I just know like sometimes like I've like looked up online like like trying to research something and then found like student projects, and like even if their project is even just mediocre, they usually have like links and stuff they use to create projects that like there's only a certain number of projects.
What define projects?
So like presentations, like yeah, sometimes you have to do like Prezi or like Google Slides for like a class, or maybe you have to do like
computer science
research or something.
projects or
Computer
something?
science project, yeah. So like a database of like things students have already completed.
Alright. And how would you envision using that, and do you think your professor in that class would think you're using these powers for good or evil?
Is a good question. I would envision it like so you could like search up just search up like the project like that you're working on. So it's like you're working on a project about like Anna Karenina. And you can see like, oh, someone's done like maybe this paper on it, someone's done this like PowerPoint, and therefore you can like pull resources from there.
Cool.
Professor? I don't know, I'm not a professor.
Yeah, well I feel like there need to be some level of academic integrity in there, or citing sources, and so you can cite Wikipedia now. When I was in school you couldn't cite Wikipedia because it wasn't legit.
And two, if they're published like on, or not like published, but if they're online, like usually the plagiarism sources that like computers have, like if it's like on
Yeah.
Google, basically they like will check it.
Okay. Cool. Alright. Don, what you got?
Is this what the idea that we're like picking?
I'm leaning towards that, but you're not sworn into it if you say it out loud right now.
Okay, I'm having a hard time like picking one idea exactly.
Okay.
Like I put them all on a list, and like some of them are like crap, but like
That's good.
you
That means it's
also
a good list.
you also said that like it's not just about the idea, it's about like how you present it, so I feel like a lot of them I could even like spin even if they were terrible, so I just need to like find one that I'm like passionate about.
Alright, I'm gonna say passion is not the thing you're looking for here, but
Okay.
Give me one idea. What's one thing that's on your list that you're thinking about?
One thing on my list, it was like an app that like consolidates all like Uber, Lyft, and like taxis, and like to find like the cheapest out of like all of them.
Cool. Check out transit-screen.com.
Oh,
They've got the metro and everything on there too.
good.
They might have like 20 employees, a slight head start, but that also means it's a good idea if other people are building it. So, cool. What you got, Zach?
I don't know if this exists already, but I know the technology's out there for like the Waze like live location technology, but used for like wait times in like drive-throughs and restaurants. Because I know if you go on a website, it'll say like typically at this time, but it's not updating with live data, which like Waze does for
Yeah.
traffic. So something like that for other services.
Do you know how Waze first got started and how they started collecting all the data for this?
No.
It was from people who didn't want to get speeding tickets. And so anytime somebody
Yeah.
saw a cop and they didn't like getting tickets, they would put in, and that was their incentive to share the data was, oh, I don't want to get pulled over if I'm sitting it, other people are. So think about it, is there some way to encourage restaurant goers who don't like waiting in line, be like, I'm in this line for 45 minutes, like, this sucks. Or is there an incentive for a restaurant owner or hostess, like, the current wait time is 45 minutes, if we let people know, maybe they'll, make a reservation or not come, which sounds like not the incentive they were going.
And that could be for like a lot of different kinds of lines. Like
Yeah.
I put that for like airport security line.
It took me 40 minutes to get through security in Chicago. Yeah. And ironically, I texted all my buddies that were also coming home because I went first. I was like, hey, I left the house more than an hour ago. I just made it through. Make sure you budget,
Yeah.
To make it through. Nick, you got a new idea?
Besides what Tim said, I can list off another one I was thinking maybe like a morning brew style like e-newsletter for like sports.
Yeah.
I would definitely subscribe to
I
that.
read the brew this morning. I like it.
I was thinking of like a transparent bracelet that has a tracking device to prevent like kidnappings and children being abducted or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's like something that's like camouflaging. The person won't be able to see it, so they can put it in the shoe, put it in the pocket. And
Okay.
like the parents will have like this application to where they know where the child is at all times.
Nice.
Just playing around.
I think it's pretty good. I have a hypothesis that a fiance would also like that if your fiance was on a bachelor party. So maybe be a use case there.
Well, we talked about this earlier, but sort of like this app that would help with like stress management. And you could like log different stress levels, and if things look really high, maybe like a pop-up, and then let's do some breathing exercises. But it could also be like more of a lifestyle thing that could recommend something even if you don't log stress levels.
Actually, I have also, before I say my idea, I have a question for the entrepreneurship challenge. Like, how feasible does it have to be? Like, for example, if I say an app, do I have to, and I don't have any idea how to build an app.
Totally fine.
Cool. Okay, because my idea is an app.
Oh, look at that.
Great. My idea is, I think the term is telepsychiatry, but basically a way for CAPS, like an app for students on campus to connect with CAPS.
Can you define CAPS?
CAPS it's the counseling services
Okay.
that we have, and I know like I myself have had some semi-traumatic experiences with CAPS, and I have a lot of friends who have had as well. So my idea is like a way to be able to connect with CAPS without having to go through kind of like, because it's at a part of campus where if you see someone going to the building, you know why they're there.
There's a stigma associated.
Yeah, and it's always kind of like, I know like I've been in that waiting room and been like really uncomfortable because I'm like, what if someone I know walks in? So kind of, and I just know that like had I been, when I was a freshman, if I had been able to like communicate with someone from my dorm room, that would have totally changed my experience, and I would have been like much more inclined to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't know exactly what that would look like, how it would be set up, but yeah, that's basically it.
Well, I would encourage you to chat with you two to talk after class to see if there's some overlap there.
Yeah.
I mentioned there's a company a couple years ago called Coral Health that was kind of doing telemedicine for college students who needed some mental health support. They're not working on it anymore, but I can connect both of you with them and kind of see what they learned. Cool.
I'm working on a t-shirt company that advocates for mental health through, I'm interested in graphic design.
Yeah.
So I think combining the two is really interesting, so you can bring like visibility to the invisible epidemic. That's like the real idea I have, but my way of like distributing, I think it's like a big problem on college campuses. So my plan, or like my model, is to do pop-ups on college campuses with like really high mental health struggle rates, and then give a percentage of the proceeds that we make back to the college campuses facilities for like counseling.
Awesome. Love it.
I was thinking about doing like let's say you have like a TV, right? But it's a touch screen, but you can like break it apart into like different like segments. So like every segment you can like slide it apart. So like let's say
Physically move it?
like physically like let's say you have a screen that's like this big, but you can like break it apart into 4 parts, and it'll like automatically like register how many parts are attached, and it'll like so if it's like let's say you have like a phone sized
Yeah.
panel, you can like just use it as a phone, but then you can like slide another panel and use it as an iPad, and slide like 2 more
Ah.
panels and like make it into like a TV, and it'll be like much more portable than like anything like an actual TV you could like bring around in a bag or something, and that way you can just like unpack it and like unload it really easily.
Cool.
Maybe it has like a battery pack in it too. I think that'd be really interesting.
Nice. Is there a phone that somebody came out with recently that folds?
Oh
Yeah.
Like a new Samsung? Like that's
Huawei,
yeah, that's like part of the technology, like what are the pieces that exist? Yeah. Cool. Okay.
I was thinking about ski goggles that kinda tell you how fast you're going, what altitude you're at, maybe like also film like when you're traveling. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So I just got back from South by Southwest. One of the coolest products I saw there. Do you guys know oh crap, what's the name of the Bose, the speaker company? They now have sunglasses with speakers right here. Then they look like normal Ray-Bans, they're cool, they don't do anything weird in your ears. There's this little speaker that only sends sound waves in your ear. You can be talking to people and they have no idea you're listening to Spotify or you're on a call with somebody. And you can look cool, you can be driving and walking across campus. Coolest product that I saw. And I'm a sunglass guy and I was very impressed.
Do they have it with like normal glasses too?
I did not see, they were selling it kind of like a food truck type thing, where they only had the sunglasses.
Interesting.
I feel like if they have the technology that exists, you could definitely swap the
I feel
lenses
like
out.
normal glasses would be really cool.
Yes, and it was cool because like I was listening and I could still hear other people, and it wasn't like the sound blocking thing where I'm in my own world. It was like, yeah, I'm here with you. Also, I got things going on in my brain you have no idea. So, awesome. So next, let's dive into a little bit of the readings for this week. Did everybody get a chance to read the Misfit post from Ann Yang? I'm curious, what did you think about that? And kind of open it up to a discussion on what was, something that you took away from Ann's experience and also her, I'd say, bravery and vulnerability to kind of put that all out there.
Just to start it off, I found it really interesting of like how much the name Misfit like represents not just her product but like her own story. I just thought there was like I couldn't think of like another company that the brand meant like so much in that aspect.
Yeah.
With her with like the adversity she faces being like a woman in entrepreneurship as well as an entrepreneur from a as well as student from a low income background. As well as like the social good she wants to do with all like the misfit fruits and vegetables.
I just thought like the courage to walk away from something was so badass and really, really mature. Like in her position, I don't know if I would have had the I would ever have the maturity to make that decision. And I was just really, really impressed. By not only by her being open, but like by making that decision to be like, all right, I need to walk away. And that was really, really cool.
She came and spoke to our first year seminar
Awesome.
with Jeff, like one of our first speakers. And she was like in the middle of her pivot or whatever, like noticing juices weren't working. So it's interesting to like hear from her again. Like now that I think back on it, she was like pretty flustered. But I'm glad she like found a solution, at least in the short term.
That's interesting too, cause I spoke with her like in a group that she had presented to a group I was in at the beginning of the year. Yeah, and it's just I don't know, it really impacted me like how she could seem like how and we can all put on like a face that can be like very not representative of what we're feeling inside. But too, if you always put on that face, you're like, oh, like this is who I am. Yeah, and just having that time to be able to step back as well as the wisdom and maturity to go like, oh, like, what am I like underneath what I'm presenting to other people?
For sure, and I've talked to therapists in my life, and I know there's a whole concept of of the masks that we wear and like who am I going to see with, what mask do I have to put on, if I have to be crushing it as an entrepreneur and it's all going great, or can you share more of kind of what's going on underneath. And I don't think we need to share everything with everyone. However, having a close group of people that you can lean on for support, especially as you go down this entrepreneurial path, like remember the people who loved you before you started anything or were big on the internet or making lots of money or whatever it was, and like those are the people that are most likely to be with you if and when it all falls apart. And I think being deliberate in building that support circle and knowing one of the things I always loved about Ann and Phil was they worked together all day, every day on these things, and they always made a point every week to have at least an hour where they just like hung out and had dinner and talked about nothing work related, and like checked in on personally how are they doing, how's your family, how are your relationships, knowing that that is so important. It's not just, hey, did you do the next thing on the to-do list, are you meeting this deliverable deadline, and making sure that you develop that trust and kind of mutual respect to be able to talk about things that aren't going well, because nobody's got it all together all the time. And I also think it's really inspiring for me. Like I met Ann when she was an undergrad, and when I first got involved with Georgia Entrepreneurship, I was her like summer launch mentor, and it was super cool. They were just kind of getting it started to kind of see where it's gone. And I remember I mentored her in summer launch. 2 years later, we had our like end of summer launch event, and that morning they were on Good Morning America presenting their products.
That's crazy.
And I was just like, holy cow! How does like you go that far in 2 years, and to think about, it's not just like a slow gradual. It's kind of like quantum steps up, and you make big leaps, and then suddenly you're playing different ball games. You add zeros on the ends of sales and cost of goods. It gets more complicated. So having some good foundational skills and also relationships and the ability to communicate, I think, is really important. Cool. Let's jump into customer discovery and kind of how to conduct interviews. I'm hoping everybody got a chance to read the article and then watch the 10-minute video. What is one thing that you've learned about customer discovery so far? We're going to go over a bunch in this class, but I'm curious if you got any sneaks. Yeah.
Like you have to know everything about the customer, not just like for example in the video, like he thought he was done when he interviewed like 7 people and knew what they like thought was what their problems were, but then the guy like he kind of took it a little far. Like he was like you have to like be the consumer, like what car do they drive, like all these things that had nothing to do with the product that he was selling.
Yep. Cool.
I found it interesting, like it's not about coming to the customer with what you think is best or like your presentation or wireframe or anything like that. You really have to have more of a listening ear and ask them questions, and then be flexible and adaptable in that moment to like carry the conversation and engage and really be interested and hear what they're saying, and then be able to like work your way through that conversation, and then connect your idea back into that and like have that not just be a one-way conversation ultimately.
Absolutely. You want to listen and understand what they know and what they need more so than what you in your head, because I guarantee everybody in this room doesn't actually know what 30 or 50 or 100 potential customers need and want and are interested in and motivated by and incentivized by. So the whole focus on customer discovery is kind of getting out of the building, but documenting what you believe to be true, and that's, I've printed out some more business model canvases. I know we went over it earlier. As you're moving forward with these ideas, write it all in pencil. These are hypotheses. These are things you think might be true, and we're going to go over the best way to kind of frame questions, and it can be anywhere from 5 to 30-minute kind of customer discovery interviews, and it's great to start with some people you're friends with. I highly encourage you to do customer discovery with everybody in this class if college students are your customer, and be nice to each other, but don't tell them what they want to hear. And then go and try talking to strangers. Like go to one of the coffee shops on campus, or even off campus outside of this college bubble, and you just say, hey, I'm a college student, doing a little bit of research for this project. People will give you 5-10 minutes of their time. They're happy to chat. And you want to either confirm your hypothesis is true, or realize, hey, actually, 72% of the people I've talked to don't want to do this. They want to do this thing instead, so maybe I need to shift how I do it. And that's why you'll kind of continually iterate on the business model canvas, kind of what goes in those different boxes based on what you're learning during customer discovery. So Are you guys familiar with the scientific method? Did you ever take a science class in high school and like have to type up a whole biolab with all of the different steps to it? Spoiler alert, that's super useful for all of the rest of your life. I mastered science, so I can tell you that yes, science is good, and that approaching problems with a hypothesis, designing an experiment to test it, going through and doing the experiment, documenting what are the inputs, like another human to talk to, you need for the experiment, and then analyzing those results is really, really useful. As entrepreneurs, you're never going to have all the information. There's no like Googleable search that just tells you everything you need to know. You can get some information from the internet for sure. However, like the best, purest source of information is customers. And sometimes it's talking to people who will end up not being your customer, and they'll tell you and they can teach you a lot throughout that kind of conversation about all of the things that they're doing or not doing or interested or not interested in that allow you to segment who it is you're selling to. And then as you design the test, you want to decide, is this true or false? Try to, well, they might buy it, you know. And I've also found in asking these questions, instead of saying like, hey, would you buy this thing? In the past 12 months, how many times have you bought a widget to solve this problem? And insert what you're doing. If you ask them to look backwards, they're not going to be nice and be like, oh yeah, I would buy this thing. They'll be like, well, in the past 12 months, I've actually bought it like 24 times. I go to the store every 2 weeks and buy this thing. Or they'll be like, oh, I bought it once, but I actually don't use that thing anymore. It's a very different buying experience. And you also really want to avoid leading the witness or asking questions that, you know, do you like fancy blue sunglasses made in Italy? You know, like, how do you protect your eyes when you go out into the sun? You know, what brands have you bought in the past 12 months to meet this need? Where did you first get introduced to those brands? What types of marketing or social media advertisement or word of mouth from other people that you know introduced you to those brands? It often takes somewhere between 7 to 13 interactions with a brand before a consumer will buy their product. So it's not like they hear about it once and they hear about it twice, they're going to buy it. It takes a lot of steps, and they have to see multiple people wearing it or posting about it on social media. We see them on Good Morning America with some Misfit juice. You know, see it at a few different Whole Foods and specialty coffee shops, and then finally they might buy one. So thinking about too, as you are trying to develop a product or a service and a brand that supports it, what are ways in which the customers you eventually want to target already interact with those brands? Social media is a huge one. If you rewind like a decade or two, it was often like, what magazines do you read? And are there like industry publications for all engineers on the planet that they get this magazine once a month? Like ACM was the Association for Computing Machinery. Like, if you were a comp sci nerd, you got that magazine. And that would be a great place to put an ad in, or to see if you could write like a guest post or get some written content basically about your brand in the places where people are already looking. In social media, maybe it's like looking at Facebook groups, or I know there's a lot of like mommy bloggers out there. If you're selling to mothers who tend to buy a lot of products for themselves and their partners and all of their children, it's a great demographic to target. You know, where do they congregate? Who are influencers in those communities? A lot of your products are targeting college students. Who are the influencers on campus? Who's the, you know, who's in student government? Who are athletes that, you know, people follow on social media? I'm going to avoid any like bribing athletes things. I feel like that's a hot topic that I'm definitely not involved with. Probably not the best joke. But again, thinking about ways that there are people who have networks that they can disseminate information about your brand or product, so that you can talk to more people, get it in front of them, and listen to what they have to say. So how to interview properly. First thing, best thing, face-to-face. You can build so much more trust and rapport by making eye contact with people. And if you're really good, you have a buddy. And the note taker doesn't have to build all of that rapport. They just sit there and type everything, and or have a field notes book, and just like write down everything they're saying and get all these answers, because you do want to document it. You could also, depending on how comfortable you are and they are, say, I'm doing this for a project. If you don't mind, I'd love to record it. I just want to document my notes later. I'm not gonna like publish it or anything, it just will help me so I can focus on our conversation, and then I can go back and there's probably a free service on the internet. You can pay somebody $2 and they'll transcribe the audio into written text, and then you can kind of analyze that text. Again, going back to the scientific method, you've got this data collection. You have to get the data in order to see where the patterns will come out. If you can't do in-person, Skype or Zoom or Google Hangout, some sort of video chat is really helpful. Next week I'll talk a lot more about nonverbal communication and how you can read people's body language and the things they're saying. Like when people touch their nose, they're kind of lying, probably not comfortable with what you're saying, don't necessarily agree with what you're saying. This is definitely not a good signal. Read people's eyebrows. Up is good. Oh, I'm excited. Yeah, this sounds good. Furrowed brow. No, this is, I don't like. They may still say, oh yeah, Katie, that sounds like a great idea. And so making sure you have somebody who can take some notes on those things as you level up as an entrepreneur. I've learned too that when you go to pitch to a group of investors, and let's say there's 3 of you on a team going in there, one person is presenting, the other 2 people should sit on opposite sides of the table, and they're not supposed to look at the presenter, they look at everybody else in the room across from them and read their body language. And see, when do they lean in? When are they like, oh, okay, touching the beard? That's really, you're like thinking. This is kind of like, okay, I'm intrigued by it. But then when people cross their legs, this is usually a defensive, oh, I'm not that interested. Oh, yeah, that's not going to work, And so having a team of people who can help read the energy levels and the nonverbal communication to the audience helps you understand how to improve the pitch in the future. Are there certain things, especially as a social entrepreneur, you got to read if people lean in when you start to talk about the impact. And this is something I got really good at with Waveborn. And I think we've got these luxury Italian sunglasses. At the core of our business is a giving model. Oh, she starts to smile. Well, let me tell you more. We work with this nonprofit, C International, that sends these eye doctors abroad to do these cataract surgeries. And I could either give a 3-second, a 30-second, or a 3-minute spiel about the social impact. And it was largely based on how much did people lean in and how much were people like, I gotta go, is this guy done yet? Like, I'm not interested, let me see the product, how high quality is it? And you'll have different features and benefits for what you're developing. And your presentation should be fungible, I guess. Like you can move the pages around in different orders based on what people are really interested in. And as you give different presentations, you don't want to tell everybody everything up front. You want to tell them a little bit. I think this is... No, that joke wasn't good. The idea, you can tell them a little bit, but not everything, so that they want to learn more, they want to have questions. If you get good at it, you can have a slide in like 30 seconds you can say that you know is going to generate a question later. And then oh, I'm so glad you asked that. And you flip to the next slide in the appendix you have that perfectly answers the question you teed up for them to ask, which makes you look doubly smart because you have thought about it. I just didn't include that in the short version. I'd love to schedule a 30-minute next meeting with you to talk in more detail about this. Alright, so thinking about how you string these things together, all this being said, you're just doing customer discovery. You're not selling anything. There is no goal for a next meeting here. I would collect their names and emails. You can follow up with them like months down the road to say, hey, as we get closer to launching our product, I really valued your feedback today. Would you mind, chatting with me for another 15 minutes next month? I value your opinion. You tell people you value them, what they're saying is useful to you. You think they're intelligent. Would you want to talk more to that person? I mean, that sounds like a conversation worth having. So think about that as you're approaching friendly faces and definitely strangers. Some of these customer discovery interviews have to be with people you don't know. Does anybody know what the first thing you should say is to someone you don't know?
I'm a Georgetown student.
Hi, I'm Tim.
Or hi, yeah.
That's step 2 though. I'm a Georgetown student. Yeah.
Alright.
So, but it's not implied. They don't know you. So one of the first ways you de-risk the situation as a stranger approaching them. Hi, I'm Mike. Oh, okay, this is Mike. Most people know people named Mike. That's not that weird. Okay, I think you can keep talking. We're going to see where this goes. On a relationship dating level, hi, I'm Mike. Also the best opening line. I've done decades of research. That's the best opening line. Don't be too cute with it. Just what is your name? Where you're from? Go from there. But again, it's building like a baseline of trust. We had a snow day on the sales lecture. But I have a whole thing in there about the different steps of the sales process. The first one is just introducing yourself, and then trying to find a problem. And again, you're focusing on their needs and pain points, not your needs to sell. Oh, so who do you want to talk to? Turns out there's a lot of people you can talk to. It's not just one person. Now, all of these humans, there tends to be more of these humans in a B2B, business to business transaction rather than a B2C. But even for like some of the mental health things you're talking about, the payer may actually be someone's parents. You know, and like if you're selling into education, like if you need Georgetown to buy it, there's a ton of people you have to deal with. You know, you need an influencer, an advocate, somebody who promotes you and says, hey, this is a great idea when you're not in the room. And you need to equip that person with like a one-page PDF or a few talking points or like a sample tweet or Facebook post for influencers so they can share it. And then understanding who is the end user, who's actually going to use it. It's many times different than who might be the decision maker. Again, like moms are decision makers and budget owners and payers for many things that their children end up being the end user. So understanding how those dynamics are at work. And don't forget about the saboteur. You may think it's great. People may tell you to your face they think it's great, but maybe their body language is saying something else. When you're not in the room, they're going to be like, actually, this is a terrible product. I can build this thing, you know, way cheaper. You already pay me. We don't need to hire these people to do it. I can do it all in-house. And just be aware that people aren't always that nice when you're not in the room. Any questions there about kind of who to talk to? And I also want to frame it, if you're doing customer discovery, don't just talk to 19-year-old college males. Like get some level of variance and diversity in the sample size, whether it's age, gender, major in school, what grade you are in school, where people work, if you want to go branch out into civilization and leave the hilltop. You absolutely have to leave your dorm. Like the whole goal of customer discovery is to get out of the building and talk to people. So little timeline here, just kind of people have a first thought, they're passively looking for something, and then they're actively looking. And again, this ties into those like 7 to 13 brand interactions. They have to see it a few times as they get to the path of, okay, now I need to buy it. How much do I like it? If I love it, maybe I'll tell my friends on social media about it. I'll share it. I'll take a photo and I'll tag them and like hashtag. What do you kids hashtag these days? Hashtag it's crispy. I learned that, right? It's crispy. That's the thing. You don't know people are saying that. I learned it South by Southwest. People will be like, oh, yeah, it's crispy. Boom. New word for you. Kids. So here are a few sample questions about the point of purchase. And again, a lot of these are asking, looking backwards over the past 12 months, when you bought something to solve problem X, when did you purchase it? Where were you? What time of day? You can also ask, were you intoxicated when you bought this thing? Was anyone else there with you? Certainly, well, I'll say with sunglasses, any person that was in a committed relationship with a partner always brought their partner with them and would not buy a pair of sunglasses if the other person didn't say they looked attractive. And that was like the magic move. If I could get the significant other to be like, yeah, Brent, you look good. Those are good looking sunglasses. Can I have $150? You're like, yeah. People are gonna tell me I look good all the time. Let's go. And then, did you buy anything else at the same time? Are there different products that don't solve the same problem and are still useful? So, for example, I sell sunglasses with socks. They're like accessories. They enhance your sex appeal a little bit. Got some swag to them. But you're not going to not buy sunglasses because you just bought socks. There's an old grocery store example of like where do you put things on the end caps and stuff like that. They usually put the toilet paper right next to the diapers, right next to the beer. Because if you're a parent of young children, you might need a six-pack when you need to get more diapers. There's like all sorts of studies that folks at Harvard did about how you strategically put things. They're also not the first thing in the store. They're like all the way in the back. If you think about when you go to Target, the electronics department, you got to get past all of the like men's and women's and like toys sections to get to the stuff that's further away, knowing that they're going to get more time for you in the store. I don't think I've ever gone to Target and not impulsively bought something that was not on my to-do list. Especially they have the $1 to $3 section right when you walk in. Like, all right, they got me going. I know I'm going to buy a few things here. What else do I want? So thinking about what you can kind of match the products with. So before we look ahead, I want everybody to look at this ultimate list of questions. This is something that I think will be super useful for you. So there's this, and then the customer discovery interview prep sheet. These are the two we're working on today. The other two handouts we went over a few weeks ago, but I want to give you a new one as you're kind of moving forward with your ideas. So I want to take a few minutes and have folks read through all of these questions, and then pick 3 to 5 questions that you want to write down that you want to ask during your customer discovery interviews. And these questions, as you're reading through it, I'll kind of go over it. Starts with kind of customer segmentation, and then goes into problem discovery. And it's like, what's the hardest part of your day? What are some of your unmet needs? What tasks take up most of your time? Elizabeth, maybe like, when do you feel the most stressed? What are the causes of anxiety or stress? Do they happen at certain times of day or certain periods of the week? Are they tied into certain classes or exams that are upcoming? What are your biggest or most important academic responsibilities or personal responsibilities? And so if you ask some of those questions and nobody actually hits on the problem you think you're trying to solve, you can go into this problem validation phase. And I'll stick with sunglasses because I know it so well. Do you find it hard to protect your eyes while driving? Oh, no, not at all. Do you keep anything in your car to help you while you're driving and it's sunny or rainy out? By the way, pro tip, polarized lenses are actually safer to drive in the rain than without them, because they block all of the glare from the rain on the road and the rain on your windshield. And so oftentimes you can ask this question, people are like, oh yeah, I keep a pair of sunglasses in the cup holder or the glove box or something like that. Tell me about the last time whatever the thing you're trying to solve is, just ask them open-ended questions. Nick, like maybe you ask, how many colleges did you get accepted to? Oh, that's great. How many shirts did you get for those different schools? And then in the past 12 months, how many times have you worn your Colgate University shirt? 0. So, how much value is that shirt bringing you? And maybe it's pretty low, which means you could probably buy it for pretty low. Thinking about things like that. I'm a fan too of asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to do X? Also, you can't use 7. And when you tell people they can't use 7, they're like, well, I can't use 7, that's a great number. No, it's a shitty number. 7 is like, I don't really care, I'm not really making a decision. If it's an 8, that's pretty good. An 8 is very different than a 6. A 6 is like, I don't know about that. If you know anything about the NPS, your Net Promoter Score, just like on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our product or service to a friend? 1 through 6 means they're a detractor, and you get a -1 point for that. 7 or 8, you get a 0, they're neutral, and then 9 or 10 is they're a promoter. And the goal is to get people to be a 9 or a 10. So if you can find problems or ask questions, people are like, oh, I'm like a 10 out of 10, I gotta solve this problem, it's super hard, like, I don't know how to deal with it. That sounds like something to lean into. People are like, it's a 4. Most people aren't going to go out of their way or exert a lot of effort or drive all the way to the store, or go online, not to Amazon, to buy something, if it's like a 4 or a 5 or a 6 in terms of how much of a problem is it. And then we get to product discovery. What would your ideal solution look like to this problem? That's a wonderful question. And keep in mind, when you're asking this question, you have told them nothing about what you're building, what your product or service is. This is not about validating, hey, the thing I'm building is great and you definitely want it. It's about understanding their problems and their pain points in such a way that it can either validate or invalidate what you have in your kind of hypothesis. And everything on the business model canvas, these are all hypotheses. So you can design customer discovery interviews to tackle different boxes or different segments on the business model canvas. And as you do 10 to 30 of these interviews, I'm strongly going to encourage you, God bless you, to get up to 30 within 2 weeks. At a bare minimum, I'm expecting everybody to do at least 10 before they pitch in the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Challenge. And one of the reasons is so you'll be smarter and more informed about what you're going to talk about. Second is, I can fill up 2 minutes of your presentation just by having you talk about what you learned in your customer discovery interviews. And I guarantee you, because I'm the guy who also coaches those judges on how to judge you and figure that out, that if you say, I've done X customer discovery interviews, you're going to automatically get a couple points more than the person who comes in and says, oh, I haven't actually talked to anybody, but look at this like really cool mock-up I built. You know? So having that social proof, the validation, and also showing that you've got some resilience and grit and went out and talked to strangers about it, not just your mom and your brother and your dog. And if all three of them want the product, I don't know what it is. You know, these are the early stages, kind of those beginning steps as you are, well, I would say like step 2 or 3 after coming up with all the ideas. So we've been working all semester on flexing those idea model stuff. Now we're going to start to actually go out and have to talk to people. And I will be the first to acknowledge there are some social anxiety issues that even I deal with, of like having to talk to strangers. Like, I don't necessarily love that. However, you have to stretch outside your comfort zone in order to grow. And if you're only talking to people you're already comfortable with and already like you and already think your idea is going to be great, then you're living in a really small bubble, and either after this class or after you graduate, at some point in the world, you're going to have to interact with a lot of people who are not all going to love what you say. Elizabeth?
Do we do the customer discovery before we submit our pitch or after we submit our pitch?
You can do them concurrently. You don't have to have the customer discovery done before you register for the pitch.
Okay.
However, the pitches will be April 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. So that's like 2 weeks from now to do those interviews.
Okay.
And I think probably Saturday night of that weekend is when slides will be due. So I would say doing them by maybe Friday, so you can put the material in the slides and say, hey, you know, here's a pie chart of the customer discovery interviews I did. X% said this, Y% said that. Yeah, so you don't have to do them all this week. I would encourage you to do one by Thursday, because there's also this like momentum issue of, if I haven't started it, it causes a lot of anxiety, and I deal with this too. I got a lot of projects I work on. If I just open a Word document and title it something, I'm like, oh, all right, I'm like 50% of the way there. Let's go. And I'm in a good mood, and I feel like, all right, I'm doing something. Like, just talk to one person, and there's this magical thing about sales. You know when the best time is to sell a product? Right after you just sold one. After you get a sale, or after you have, and by sale in this instance, it's just someone agreeing to talk to you for 5 to 10 minutes about this. You'll have the momentum, you'll feel good. If you're at a coffee shop, you maybe have some coffee for additional energy, but you'll want to talk to another person about it, because you feel good, you learned something, this is pretty interesting, and it's not like this like scary thing that you don't really know what it's going to be like, and you don't want to open this box, because once you do it once, you're like, oh, this isn't that bad. I know 0 humans on the planet who have died from customer discovery interviews, so the floor, you know, it's not going to be that bad. Yeah. Tim, you got a question?
Yeah, 2 questions. The pitch is 5 minutes?
Yep.
And then is there a slide count? Like
1 to 12. It's up. There's no real maximum, but if you got more than 10 or 12 slides, it'd be hard to get to. You could put more in the appendix. You definitely can have an appendix, because there'll be 5 minutes or so of Q&A. And when you do the pitches too, you'll do 2 in one night with like 2 different groups of judges. It's basically to give you more experience, and in case you absolutely bomb one of them, it's okay, you get to try again. And so that is part of helping you get those reps. And there's also a caveat of like, if one room is really mean judges and gives everybody super low scores, we want to be able to offset that with, hey, somebody else saw them and actually gave them, you know, 9s or something. Yeah. So then we get to the product validation. Just running through this real quick. What do you think about this product? This is a point where you can start to introduce something and say, hey, do you think this would solve this problem or need? But I want you to do a lot more questions before you ask anything about your specific product, to understand how much money have you spent on similar products or services. You know, what's your monthly budget for eating out? If it's like figuring out when to go to restaurants, like if they only eat out once a month, I don't know, as opposed to somebody who's like, oh, I eat it 3 times a week. Like, we go out all the time and we hate standing in line. Oh, okay, this sounds like somebody that's more in line. And you will talk to some of these customer discovery interviews. People will maybe even pretty early on clearly not be your customer. Still go through and ask them more questions because you've already started the dialogue. They're probably not going to leave in the middle, and they may have other insights that you wouldn't have thought about because maybe they solve it somewhere else, or they've got a subscription service that already does this thing, whatever it might be. And then you can also ask, based on your current solution, which you're using, what could we do to optimize or improve that product? Because you can say, on a scale of 1 to 10, no sevens, how happy are you with your current solution? Whatever they say, if it's not a 10, great. What can I do to make it a 10? That's awesome. And now they're like, oh, you're going to make it a 10? Okay, great. And now they're literally going to tell you what they want to make this thing better. So that's a really good way to spin it and kind of get them to help move themselves closer to wanting what you're doing. And then ending the interviews, there's a couple good notes here. I think one good thing to do is to echo back or kind of mirror what they said to you. Hey Zach, what I'm hearing you say is X, Y, and Z, and you don't actually care about H. Does that sound accurate to you? Nod his head. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Sure.
And again, it's making sure that you're listening right. If you have a note taker, you can kind of have them play it back and be like, hey, here's what I heard. The last thing you want to do too is also ask for 2 referrals to other people you can do customer discovery interviews with. Does anyone know why you ask for 2? Does anybody know about the powers of 2 and how things get much bigger when everybody gives you 2 people and you talk to 2 and then you talk to 4 and you talk to 8? It gives you a much wider universe of humans to communicate with, also knowing that maybe 30% of them are going to be worthless and not actually talk to you or meet with you. So if you have 2, you probably at least get 1 to kind of keep the total number of people you have growing. And if they both work, great. I sent an email today from Halcyon saying, hey, forward this to 3 social entrepreneurs. Like 3 different people who might apply to our program. I know other people who, when they've expanded products, they've said, can you connect me to 5 people in your network who might be interested in this? 5's a lot. However, if people actually do it, that's probably some good leads. And it really is an exponential curve that you're trying to build here in terms of how to grow. All right. So looking ahead to next week, your assignment is to conduct 10 to 30 customer discovery interviews. That's on you, which is to say I'm not going to say show me transcripts from this many customer discovery interviews. I am going to ask, we're going to do a lap at the beginning of each class, accountability, and you're going to have to go around and say how many customer discovery interviews have you done in the past week. You have until the pitch 2 weeks from now to conduct all of them. However, everybody has to do at least 1. And I'm encouraging 1 by Thursday, so then you have a little bit of momentum and you've gotten over that first hump, and maybe you can do some this weekend. I mean, you talk to people when you get lunch or dinner with them, when you're out at a party, when you're in other classes. Like, there are lots of times to just be like, hey, can you mind if I ask you a couple questions? I got a school project. It doesn't have to be a super formal, hey, I've got a clipboard here and I'm going to answer these questions now. You want to kind of meet people where they are and make sure you're both comfortable with it. We talked about asking for 2 referrals, and then next week we're going to go over any questions about the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Challenge and how to pitch. Next week I'm going to stand up and give a whole presentation because part of it's all about body language and how you do these things. And with that, that's all I've got for this week. Do you all have any questions or anything for me before we break?
Oh, I have one.
Yeah.
Do you, when we submit, our pitch application, are we for sure going to get a spot first?
Yeah. So that's good too. You're not getting rejected before you even start. That's nice. Cool. Thanks, class.